What does the Ramah say regarding building your sukkah? He says first put up the walls and then the schach. What's the ostensible reason for such a thing? You're getting ahead of us. Tasev illumina asui, basically. You can't have passively built what do you call it? A passively built structure for your
How am I
sukkah.
getting ahead of myself? That's the reason quoted in post game.
Okay, fine, because we're not there yet. We first have to, discuss it. Here's how it goes.
Okay.
I'm going to put this on the screen. We're going to see something in the Yalkut Yosef only because it works out and it's a good reference, even if we might disagree with the methodology of it. Okay. He says here, you guys want to see it? Oh, sorry, I have it on the screen. But he writes here, okay, where is this located? I think this is in Siman Taf Reish Lamed. Let me check my notes over here. The Ramah mentions this. This is the Chumrah of the Ramah. Okay, it's not in Shulchan Aruch, by the way. There's some things that people believe are so obvious that they think it's Shulchan Aruch. Okay, hold on one second. No, I didn't put it here. Oh, I didn't put it on the screen here also. Okay, so here's what he's quoting. This is it's not in Touch Free Shlamid. It's I think it's in a different simon now. First the walls, then the schach. Let's say he just puts four pillars, the corners, four poles at the corners, are not walls, but they could do a very good job holding up the roof. Sometimes you could build the roof of the sukkah first. Yesh poselim, v'yesh machshirim. It's actually a machlokes. Some say puzzle, some say kosher. And the halacha is actually it's kosher b'diavad. Uvruchi namim varchinon. That's an expression, a Talmudic term. It's an Aramaic saying we can even say a bracha on such a sukkah. That's how kosher it is. You don't have to worry about it. Oh, maybe misafek. I shouldn't say brachas here because it might not be kosher. He put up the schach first, and then he put the walls. It's actually kosher. Okay, you're surprised by that. Well, tasim and also is apostle, isn't it?
Yeah.
So let's look into the sources he brings over here. He says this levush tofer ish lamed ches pasal mishum shekevan she'ena sukkah nechsheret el yedei shenigberu hadifanot. What makes the sukkah kosher? If it's just schach, there's no sukkah. What is the final, the makabim patish of your making your sukkah kosher? Putting up the walls. It's like the schach happened. Okay, passively happened. Let's go to the next document here. This is just an introduction, by the way, to the proofs to the next position that he takes. I think this is just a good source sheet for the general machlokas. The next tshuva is actually quite good because it's well based on Gemaras and Rambams, for example, okay, which are more held up. Okay, and it's tasev lo mina asui. Where does this expression tasev lo mina asui come from? By the way, what's the paradigm case?
It sounds
real
to me
case.
like it's a drush. Is it?
It sounds like yes. It sounds like a drash, but it's actually brought up explicitly in Chazal, and they do disqualify a certain type of sukkah in the Mishnah
because it's
because of this.
That you shall do below me the soy.
Yeah, it shouldn't be just happen passively. But what is the case where this came up? We'll see it soon. The hint, it's the haystack case. But how does it mean the haystack case? Well, the general rule of tasa min lo min asui and the fact that it is applied to certain sukkot is already in the Mishnah. There are certain sukkahs which are disqualified.
No, I mean that it doesn't apply to the sukkah.
But to this particular case of building the roof first and then putting up the walls with our prefab sukkahs, because a lot of our prefab sukkahs, what do they use? Some sort of skeleton, a frame, which you could technically put up the schach first. And by the way, I could do that right now. I have a frame of my sukkah sitting outside my house, and I could put up the wood and make a roof right now over it before creating the halachic walls.
Right.
Okay.
But the Yalkut Yosef is Mako on applying that. He basically says
he's not the only one. Mako,
it's not really a big deal.
Yeah, it's not. It's he says Levush. It's also the Ramah. The Ramah. You could spend all your time looking through a Shulchan Aruch. You'll never find such a rule. It's in the Ramah.
Okay.
The Ramah is not Shulchan Aruch. Until this week, I was under the impression, I thought I'd been told this by people smarter than me. So now I have to look into this again. Was the Beis Yosef aware of the Ramah and his rulings? Does Beis Yosef relate to, let's say, the writings of the Ramah on the Torah? Because the Ramah responded to the Torah. The Beis Yosef, which is written on the Torah, it preceded the Shulchan Aruch. And it turns out, I've now seen proof, and I should have known about this, the Shulchan Aruch was printed in Venice only a few years, within a decade from when the Shulchan Aruch was first written. And it turns out the Beis Yosef himself sent manuscripts of the Shulchan Aruch to Venice for printing. Why? Because in Ottoman Palestine, there were no printing presses. There was no technology. But in, nice, wealthy places in Europe, like Venice, which was one of the wealthier cities in Europe at the time, they did have printing presses. So you had to print there, right? Printing was expensive, but it was better than, let's say, copying manuscripts. And the first printed edition of the Shulchan Aruch from 1575 already has the Ramah in there. So did the Beis Yosef ask for the opinions of the Ramah, his Mapah? That's what they officially call it, even though you can open up Shulchan Aruchs now and you don't see that the Hasagos or the Ha'aros of the Ramah are called the Mapah, but that's what he officially called it, right? Because it's Shulchan Aruch, so it's the the tablecloth on the table, right? So the Ramah is right there in the Shulchan Aruch. Why did this come up? Because we were shown the usual first edition of the Shulchan Aruch, the first printed edition of the Shulchan Aruch, where the Shulchan Aruch calls kaparos a minhag shtus, right?
Yep.
First printed edition. Kaparos are a minhag shtus. You're not supposed to do it, and that was softened in later editions of the Shulchan Aruch, because how could you say such a thing that Jews do that? You're not Jews. Anything that Frummy Jews do, despite how irrational and how dubious it might be, you're not allowed to knock it, because that's our nonsense. And by the way, I actually believe that I make a very critical distinction. If we could somehow convince other Jews not to do things like kaparas and tashlich, that'd be great. However, if, let's say, the Gentile authorities come to crack down on kaparos for whatever reason, then I would be 100% against that. Why? Because when the Gentiles are cracking down, for example, or the secular, okay, they believe that they're cracking down on Jewish religion. So for them, cracking down on kaparas, which is not so good, they could also crack down on tzitzis and davening, and Talmud Torah and Bris Milah. It's all the same to them. So we have to fight against that.
Keep familial disputes familial.
Yeah, yes. So, and this I think was the mistake made during the Metzitza controversy more than 20 years ago, which was I think that there were some who wanted to impose no Metzitza befeh, no oral suction after the circumcision, as a matter of health, like get health departments involved. So, yeah, maybe it's wrong, maybe it's not right, but to get the health department involved in Milah, they're going to start legislating on Milah. Maybe they'll decide, you're right, this is a health hazard. Milah itself is a health hazard. Yeah. Yes.
We might get rid of the Rambam's writings, so let's get the Goyim involved. The Goyim see actually the whole Gemara is bad. Let's
Yeah.
put it all.
Yes. That was a mistake. So we don't. I 100% defend Jews, and if Jews want to have, let's say they were come to me, we want arrange for us. Okay, let's say entirely Jewish situation. They want to be able to go to a lake. They need my help as I'm not a politician. Some sort of help arranging for use of the public park for gathering at 4:00 in the afternoon near the lake so Jews can tashlich. So I'd be all for it, because Lav Dafka doing a mitzvah. It's okay on Yontif to go out to the park and have fun, as long as it's not, frivolous, right? So therefore, let's get back to this. So he brings other poskim who didn't agree with the Lavush. So it says here the Bach didn't exactly agree with the Lavush. Shepasal af b'divad the Katav shesta abazeh. Okay, the Bach felt that the Lavush was mistaken. The Bach, was he Ashkenazic?
Yes.
Yes, and was he after the Ramah? Yes. He felt no. You put up the roof first and then the walls. It's kosher. It's interesting. The Bach was after everybody, but he's still a commentary on the Beis Yosef and the Torah, and mostly the Torah, and not the Shulchan Aruch.
The Shita.
Well,
the Shita.
Yeah, it's better. Be earlier. Put yourself early. If you hang out with Rishonim, people will treat your words with more authority. Right? Okay. Okay, so now we got into the general machlokas. Let me bring up the next thing. Okay, why did this come up? I'll give you a little bit of history. I put this in a blog post from a few years ago, and it goes like this. Hold on, I have to flip over these pages. It came out upside down. Okay, that's the first one. I flipped over my camera to take a better picture, but it came out also on the computer flipped over. Here's what happened. Here's a little bit of history. Okay, almost a decade ago, if not exactly a decade ago, on the first night of Sukkot, there was a wind/rainstorm here in Kochav Yaakov. The storm started at like 9 p.m., well after people started their meals. So if you're me, okay, you try to take in Yom Tov Sukkot early, because it's obvious, as we saw before, the Shulchan Aruch held B'shita that every single Shabbos and Yom Tov has to be taken in early with Mariv. What's the Shulchan Aruch's definition of taking in Shabbos early as a requirement? Mariv before Shkia. So that's what I do, and I have Sukkahs. God willing, we'll have a minion like that. For some reason, all that I told you guys about on Pesach, all those things that every mitzvah has to be after Tzeis, which is very dubious in sources. This is the most dubious ones. The fact that you can only do Sukkah at night, Dafka after Tzeis, is such a late svara. Okay, no Havamina in Talmud or Rishon of such a thing. It's such a late svara, yet some people are mocking me for that. So we were already quite done, and how much am I gonna eat anyways? We were done with our meal well before 8 p.m., which is totally normal, by the way. Even if you daven later, you could have done that. And I went to sleep in the sukkah. And when the wind started and the rain started, I already got myself out. But there are some people who were still eating just when it started. And the sukkahs, some people's sukkahs were knocked down on themselves, and there was even an injury. One woman was hospitalized. Other people's sukkahs were basically destroyed by the storm. Okay, my sukkah, thank God, survived. Without minimal damage because of its location. It's up against the house at an L, so it just gets pushed against the house, so nothing happens to it. So the question came up: Yom Tov Day, people were left without sukkahs. Some people's schach is down, others their walls are down, or both. The sukkahs are puzzle. You cannot really build a sukkah on Yom Tov, or can you? Is there a precedent for even fixing a sukkah on Yom Tov? It turns out, yes, it's in the Gemara. It's in the Rambam. There are ways to be machshir a sukkah even on Yom Tov, even though you're not supposed to be constructing things on Shabbos and Yom Tov. Construction is usually a malacha. That's forbidden even on Yom Tov.
So hammering and nails or that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But finishing a sukkah from a pasul sukkah to a non-pasul one, once usable, is not considered tikkun kli.
Okay.
That's the thing we're going to learn from tomorrow, from what I can tell, right?
So we're gonna get there. So God willing, we'll talk about it. So the question was, most people didn't know, were afraid you can't really fix your sukkah on Yom Tov Day. Yom Tov Day was a beautiful day. So comes the first day of Chol Hamoed. They're asking, what do I do? There was one fellow whose sukkah fell thusly. The schach was perfectly intact, but the walls were down. So what should he do? How should he repair his sukkah on Chol Hamoed? So just put the walls back, right? No, that's Tazim and Asui. That's like the Ramah. The sukkah doesn't exist. The second, the sukkah was pasul. There's no defanos anymore. So he has to put up the walls again and then do like the Ramah says in Levush, relay the schach. Okay. So apparently one of these fellows went to someone who claims to be a rabbi to get such a psak. And he looked, the Mishnah Berurah, that's what the Mishnah Berurah says on this Ramah. Walls first, then schach. Your walls were knocked down. Schach is still there. It's like the schach isn't there. You got to put up the walls, relay the schach. And the local dayan got wind of this and said, you should know there's a tshuva right here. The next page in the Yalkut Yosef disagrees. Okay? I'll read you what he said, his tshuva. He said this. And he came to me and he sort of blamed me. Why? Because I think the fellow who asked the question was an American. Okay? So he says, you told me I had to relay the schach. I said, well, I did not deal with this question at all. And if I would have told him if he wants to be machmir, it is a Ramah in a Mishnah Berurah. It's not like this isn't something that's not grounded. I have amina, but I didn't look into this issue. He says, look, there's tshuvas right here from great Gedolim who said that basically we're going to read this forthwith, and then we're going to see some Talmudic sources, that actually are the precedent for this. That if a person were to have built his sukkah properly, and then it was destroyed somehow, so in order to fix the sukkah, it like in this particular case, we do not say that the schach came into being passively. We say that because initially the schach was laid beheter in the right way, it is not considered tasav elimnosi. He did make the schach properly. Let us see in the tshuva, and then we'll see more sources over here. Sorry, you can't see it on the screen. I will put it here. Which page is this? Is it this one? Okay. Here, let's see the case, okay? This very case. By the way, so I thought it was funny that, the dayan, who of course reads Rabbi Avi Grossman, is aware of these things. So it's good to know. I'm not saying, I think that unfortunately, like I said, the family puts out a lot of halachas for them. They're very good Bar-Hayim and stuff like that. They had nothing to do with, let's say, I don't think they treated, let's say, issues of the temple with the same thoroughness that they did, let's say, Bar-Hayim and Yoredea, correct? Because if they would have, I think they would have come to different conclusions. But it seems, with regards to, let's say, okay, I'm just saying.
The Chaim wrote, what was the sefer on
Likutei Halachos.
No, on the avodah.
Isn't it Likud Halachos?
That was
We
like
mentioned a lot, and you have the Shulchan Aruch L'Asi level. You have the Rambam. Okay. Either way, the point is we should look into these things because then you come to more I guess educated or whatever. You get better conclusions from it. He says here, what's the case? Sukkah shnesta b'kashrut. Sukkah made kosher. She'amida defanot v'achar kach haschach. Did it right. First the walls, then the schach. V'achar kach noflu ad defanos. Our case, walls fell down, schach is still standing. Bein she'aya zeh kodem hachag. Uvein she'aya b'toch hachag. Whether it happened before the festival or during the festival, yachola amid had defanot. So he could put the walls back. V'yashir schach al matkunto. Leave the schach as is. Just put the walls back. Shekol davar shena'asa b'chashrut. Anything that was already made kosher, it was done properly. Ein bo mishum ta'aseh v'lo min ha'asui. Okay, it's not considered made passively. So he brings the example over here. The Ben Ish Chai in Rav Palim over here talks about this case. שעשה סוכה בחשרות עד דפנות תחילה והסכך אחר כך, ונפלו עד דפנות בתוך ימי החג. אם די כשחוזר ועושה עד דפנות, משום שהסכך כבר נעשה מתחילה בכשרות. This was already dealt with, this very case. And there's some other poskim over here in Vavei Amudim, Seferim, and other poskim, שכיוון שנעשה בחכשר מתחילה, אף שנפל הדפנות, אין בזה משום תעשה ולא מן העשוי. Okay? No such issue. And Chayotzebo b'fritche yeshuva yoredeh b'shem shoot arba atrim oven. What's it talking about? Cheder hamikorav yeshbo mezuzah. Let's take a different case. A roofed wall, yes, a roofed room with a mezuzah. Uva erev sukkot patacha kirui b'sikecha cheder b'schach kasher. What does he do? He rips off the ceiling and he puts on schach. Okay, like this. Imagine we could just remove this drop ceiling and the tiles up that are above us. Make schach out of this room. After Chag HaSukkot, Yishlicha schach, ve'achzira tikra ketchila, v'amezuzah nishara b'mkoma. So we have a mezuzah over there. Even though technically speaking, does this place even deserve a mezuzah? Does anybody live here?
No.
It's a real chiddush that you put mezuzahs. Okay, it's a real chiddush that we have mezuzahs on batei medrash and synagogues where people don't live. In the olden days, why they start putting mezuzahs on synagogues? By the way,
Like have the beetle there, or they used to.
yeah.
Also, synagogues, like in the very old days, used to be like almost hotels.
Yeah, that's where they fed them. That's why that minhag of kiddush in the synagogue. Okay, nowadays there's no one sleeps here. I mean, maybe sometimes I doze off on, or maybe many times I doze off on my book, or sometime in the middle of the day. But that's not really considered residence here, and I think the Rosh Kol would be actually kind of offended if anybody were to take up residence here.
Same reason why lighting menorah in the big Knesset.
Plug this in?
It's kind of bizarre.
Give me that cord and plug this in. Okay, so let's get into this thing. So he talks about that. The mezuzah, basically, when he took off the roof of this building, there was no reason to have mezuzah there. Oh, the cheder, the room was recreated with the mezuzah still on the door. So does that count? He removed the ceiling, so maybe the room didn't exist anymore, and now the mezuzah has to be re-affixed at the doorpost, right? You manipulate that a drop, just something. I don't know.
I'm gonna put it this way, maybe.
Oh, good. Yeah. See. Okay. Good. Thank you very much. Okay. Oh, just kind of flip it over again. Oh, someone's sending questions. Nope, not a question. Giant 9-liter bags of milk available. How do you even take a 9-liter bag of milk? Where do you put such a thing? Okay.
Bags.
Well, I'm saying no. If you have a yeshiva dormitory, you could take it. Why?
Bags of milk.
Actually, it's kind of good. It works better in your fridge. It's much easier to store. I appreciate it. They do? Okay. We Baruch Hashem, we don't have such a problem with this. Hold on one second. I'm getting a message. Okay. If anybody wants cucumbers, we have cucumbers. Okay. Let's continue. The Kaimalan Bayit Shein Lo Tikra Paturim Mizuzav Lachain Siva Litoa Mizuzav Lachsor Luklava Mechadash Bivracha. He thought, got to reaffix the mezuzah. You took apart the roof, so you have to do it. Vagon Bal Arbature Oven Chalakalav. The Torah Oven disagreed with Katav. He wrote, She Pisul Ta'asev Lo Mizuzav Lo Havi Elikashanasa Pisul Mitchila. Tasev aluminum also is only a psul when it was made passive to begin with. Never was made properly. But originally there was a room, and that mezuzah was affixed to the door of the room properly. So that mezuzah was tased, for lack of a better word, and not minha asui. Okay? Even though eventually it took apart the room. Okay? And there are other examples. They say, let's take this. You see that the door frame is a chet, right? There's two side pieces, and the crossbar, right? The lechis and the korah. They also say that if you were to just rip out the chet of that door and find a doorway that doesn't have the lechi and the korah, the mezuzahs and the mashkov, so you could just affix that to the door. And the mezuzah that came with it is also kosher in the new location because the mezuzah was affixed to those doorposts, bekashrus. Or the other example they give is your tzitzis. If you were to tie tzitzis onto your beged, let's say over here, I wear tzitzis. Okay, let's say you were to just cut off this corner. Okay, a few finger lengths. Okay, a whole tefach by tefach corner of this garment of tzitzis. Right, and you were to take this braid of tzitzis and then affix it to a garment that needs tzitzis, that'd be 100% kosher. Why? Because when I initially tied this braid of tzitzis, I didn't do it passively. I didn't tie the braid and then attach it to the corner. I tied the braid onto the corner properly to begin with. And the chiddush is that I could even transfer to a new beged. If, let's say, some guy in my sleep were to prank me, he'd cut my tzitzis off here. So now it's a 3-cornered garment, right? Or he just cut off the braid from my tzitzis. So I'd be able to reattach the braid of the tzitzis to that garment because it was made initially properly. Make sense? So that's why they give an example, and there's others who hold like this, that it was done properly to begin with. Whatever, the tzitzis, the mezuzah, the roof of your sukkah was built properly to begin with, so it could be transposed or it could be fixed this way. Let's look at Talmudic sources that bring this up in order, okay? The first is, once again, in our favorite Masechta, because we mentioned it twice, we had 2 sukkahs that came from Eruvin, so let's get to a third sukkah in Eruvin. Eruvin is very relevant for what? For sukkahs. Why? As a matter of fact, Eruvin is more relevant for sukkahs. Why is that? Because a lot of the principles of Eruvin are mostly just the Rabbanans, right? It's dealing with the Eruvin, which is always the Rabbanan. But building sukkahs is Doraisa. So a lot of the principles that they discuss there are more nafkamina midoraisa. Okay? Sleeping in the sukkah is a Doraisa issue. Okay. So let me see here. Let me read this. It's an Eruvin. You know what? I want to. Well,
sleeping in the sukkah is doraisa.
Well, yeah, it's doing this. I'll share my email thing over here so that everybody can see it.
Yeah,
it's okay. I honestly believe that initially when the Lubavitcher authorities said not to sleep in the sukkah on sukkahs, they were not trying to give a lechatchila heter. Instead, they were following the Ashkenazic precedent of justifying that which they see others doing, because the prevalent minhag in northeastern Europe was, I won't even call this it was the prevalent practice on the ground in northeastern Europe was people did not sleep in the sukkah.
Yeah, it's too cold.
Yeah, it's too cold. Everybody knows that.
Minhag not to freeze to death.
Yeah, so you have it that even the Ramah and the Vilna Gaon provide justifications after the fact, halachic justifications for people not sleeping in the sukkah. So too, the Lubavitchers did that. And later, they just took their justifications too seriously. And when they came back there, it's true.
Based in Crown Heights, which is not, which has a lot of grime.
Well, you could have a private yard and all that. And there are ways, or on the roof, there are ways you could have a sukkah to sleep outside. Yeah, you could do it. It's not the craziest thing. But a lot of people in Manhattan, by the way, most of the normal Jews who live in Manhattan, which they shouldn't, because Manhattan's really not conducive to living Jewish. Even if you're in a very Jewish neighborhood like Washington Heights, it's still really hard to actually Jew in Manhattan. Okay, with the Eruvin issues every single Shabbos, and and elevators and doormen and everything. Manhattan is a minefield for trying to live like a Jew. I understand that people live there. When I used to go to Yeshiva University's high school for boys, and I was there during the week, and I thought the neighborhood didn't seem Jewish just being around Amsterdam Avenue and 185th Street, but it turns out a lot of Jews live there. You walk just westbound a little bit on any of the side streets, it doesn't seem Jewish anywhere.
Mostly Spanish.
Yeah, and it's not bad. You could walk there. But I remember our principal, who was our neighbor at the time, he was principal for 2 years, introduced us a little bit to the neighborhood. Yeah, there's actually the Breuers community lives here, a lot of Yekis, and a lot of the really close faculty of YU, and just regular people live in the neighborhood. Rav Schechter lives there. I was thinking, how do they live? Okay, no Eruv. Okay, where's the kosher stores? Where's open areas? How do you Jew at all? How do you live like a Jew? And where do you build your sukkah? So it turns out they have sukkahs in their areas in the apartment buildings, like in indoor courtyards where they have a communal sukkah. Do you even sleep in such sukkahs? I don't know. Like one of those big apartment buildings, like Rav Schechter and my Rabbi Cohen, they lived there. Did they get to sleep in those communal sukkahs? I don't know how it works. Was there even a Havamina?
Why wouldn't they get so?
Well, because it's a communal type of thing. It's like everybody's having meals in there and everything. I don't know how it works. I felt bad enough for the type of people who can't have a sukkah around their house in more suburban places, so they use the shul sukkah for their meals. There's no havamina that they're going to be sleeping there, and they have to schlep out their food every single time to go to have a meal there. It doesn't make sense. Live in Eretz Yisrael, be normal in Eretz Yisrael, even in urban areas, Haredi communities. What do? They make sure that your apartment, even if you're on the 10th floor, what do you have? An open area where you could have a decent sized sukkah. Okay, so okay, let's not get sidetracked about that. I was just very surprised that people actually could live there. Okay, let's see what it says in Eruvin here, and this is just a question over here. We're not going to go into the whole thing. Just want to show you over here. Hold on a second. Here, what's the question about using Adam and Kalim? Building a wall of the sukkah out of unusual objects. Kalim, Adam, Behema. Can you turn people into a wall? Okay. So the Gemara here is going to discuss something. It's actually kind of interesting. Esfe, Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak, L'Rava. He asked the question. Nafal dofna. The sukkah's walls fell down. Notice it doesn't say the schach fell down. Wall fell down, but just one wall. Remember, sometimes 3 walls kosher, 2 walls not kosher. Got to put the 3rd wall back. Lo yamid ba adam beima v'chilim milo yizkofet amita lifros elasadin lefeish ein osin all right batchila b'yom tov. Okay, there's certain things you can't do on Yontif because that's making an ohel, construction on Yontif. You can't put back another wall. You can't use adam, a kalim, or a behema. Sometimes you have a horse or a cow that's big enough, it's halachically a wall. Or enough people standing, side by side makes a halachic wall. What do you say?
There's a separate rule that I think maybe it's only for the schach that kelim cannot be used for it because they are
makabel tuma. In this case, your walls of the sukkah could be makabel tuma. They could even be tummy. Okay,
but
so
not
the schach.
Okay,
We're talking about defanos. Okay, right. You could even make your walls out of tumas nevela. Okay, a nevela which is tamei, and a guy who's just been touched with sharets, a dead sharets, and give me some good tamei kalim. Okay, all metal kalim that were in the room with the dead person. Okay, so they're all tamei. So that's what it has: tamei kalim and a nevela, a gigantic carcass, and a few tamei people. Okay, so ironically, if you'd use a Gentile, it wouldn't be because Gentiles aren't inherently tamei. It cannot be mokabel tuma. Okay. B'yom tov ve'ein tzarich lomer b'Shabbos, and if it's Shabbos, you can't do this either. Constructing. Amar le'at amar li meha v'ana amina lecha meha. Yeah, but I have a different source. Oseh adam et chaviro dofen kedei she'ochal v'yishteh v'yishan v'yiskovet abitav v'yifros le'sadin kedei she'lo tipul chama alamez v'alochlin. Okay, so I have a case on Shabbos where you could actually create mechitzos and even a sort of ohel-like thing on Shabbos to protect the dead person. Okay, sometimes you can't. People die on Shabbos, how do you protect them? Okay, so they have conflicting sources talking about what? Creating walls and mechitzas out of even people on Shabbos and Yontif. Kasha na adadi, you're right. There's a contradiction here. Lo kasha. Ha Rabbi Eliezer, ha Rabbanan. Okay, so it's actually a machluk as Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbanan. We'll go a little bit farther here. Hold on, we'll get to this here. Hold on one second. Let's get to the part where we need. Oh, look over here. Okay. So Rabbi Barbachana says that Rabbi Yochanan says, you're not supposed to take an oil ride mitchila, okay, a temporary ohel l'chadchila on yontif. But vein tzarich lomer Shabbos lo nechlu elu lahosif. What about adding to an ohel arai? Technically speaking, there are those who permit on Shabbos and Yontif. Rabbi Elazar Omer ein mosif b'yontov vein tzarich lomar b'Shabbos. You can't add to an ohel arai. But the Chachamim say mosifim b'Shabbos ein tzarich lomar b'yontif. There is a way to actually add to an ohel arai on Shabbos even. Wow. And the Rambam paskins that way. El lokashia hak Rabbi Meir hak Rabbi Yehuda Detanya Asab levehema dofen l'sukkah Rabbi Meir posel. Rabbi Yehuda actually says if you turn the behema into a wall of the sukkah, it's puzzle. But Rabbi Yehuda makshir. Okay, so you see here the Gemara continues with this lahosif, and over here the chelin. Hold on, lokashia habedofen shlishis habedofen revius. Okay, there's actually a machlokas here. When you're adding this third wall on Yontif, by the way, what's the assumption? Running assumption. Are you putting back the third wall or a fourth wall? What's the nafkamina between the third wall and the fourth wall? Someone tell me.
It's Hidor.
The fourth wall is not necessary. It's just for aesthetics or privacy. The third wall is what actually makes the sukkah kosher. Okay.
Or if it's even farther, two complete walls and one incomplete wall.
Okay, whatever. The third wall. So wait a second. That's this. Dekadami dekfani nafal dofna shmami na. What? The fact that says nafal dofna. Okay, it's wall. Now you can put back. What does it teach us? Shmami na. We'll see how the Rambam understands this. Okay, here's what the Rambam says. The Rambam's take on this Gemara. Dofne sukkah kasherim min hakol. First of all, your walls of the sukkah can be made out of anything. That's the first thing. She'ein anu tzrichim ela mechitza mikol makom v'afilu mi Bar-Hayim. We can make a mechitza out of anything, even Bar-Hayim. There's a case in Erevin of making makeshift walls in order to bring someone back in. He stepped out of the chum. So what do? Get all sorts of people to make shuros, a mechitza, so that he could walk between the shuros, and so he's in a Rishus HaYachid type of thing now, or an extension, a closed-in area, and then they make shuros that he could walk between to get back to the city within the chum. You heard of such a thing? Yeah, you could use people to do that. Okay, good. So there's a precedent for that. Can you shut the fan? So here's what the Rambam's saying. Listen to this. Here's what the Rambam understood it. A person can turn his friend into a dofen on Yontif. You guys didn't want the apples? Healthier than crackers. Okay. Right? How do you make your friend a dofen on Yontif? You could actually find a wall, construct a wall. Your sukkah isn't kosher on Yontif. But here's how you do it. The friend is like the third wall. He's making it kosher. Okay? You have the friend here. He's going to make your sukkah kosher on Yontif. How do you do that? Okay? He has to do it somehow that the guy doesn't know. The guy who is the wall doesn't know he is the wall. Okay? Okay, the guy who becomes a wall, you trick your friend into being the wall. Stay there exactly. Stand exactly like that. You're wide enough. You're 3 tefachim wide, right? The board that he uses as the third wall, in one case, has to be 3 tefachim wide, right? Mm-hmm. And within 3 tefachim of the corner. So your friend, you measured him. His shoulder span is more than 24 centimeters. Okay? Aval imaso ledas aser b'yontif. The friend knows what's going on. Can't do that on yontif. But on Chol Moed it works. Dofen revius b'yontif. You can do dofen revius on yontif. Aval dofen shlishis lo yase osa b'chelim b'yontif. Dofen shlishis you can't do with kalim. But they point out, but dofen shlishis you can do with an adam. Okay? Lefishu machshir sukkah venos an all right b'yontif. Okay, you can't make an all right. That's actually the machshir. If you use kalim, if you used an adam, it'd be okay. You're not really constructing. What is the implication of this halacha, by the way? Why is this relevant to what we're discussing? Because you can compensate for a missing third wall in Yontif by having the friend stand there. If it was really like the Osrim say, the people say after relay the schach, this fellow's sukkah fell down in Yontif. The schach is there, but there's not enough walls. He lost a wall such that he only has 2 walls in Yontif. All right? The halacha here says he can compensate for the missing third wall by what? Getting his friends to stand there. They have to be unaware, but still, he could somehow re-kosher the sukkah. If it was as they say, what will we require them to do? Relay the schach also. Right, Leon? We'd expect them to say, once he puts that third wall back on Yontif, or after Yontif, he'd also have to put back the schach. But you see, the way the Rambam understands this Gemara, I think this is also how Rashi understands the Gemara, it is sufficient that you just somehow get the friends to stand there and put back that third wall. Let's assume that all three walls were legitimate walls. Put back the third wall, and the sukkah would be fine. So this is a precedent for that thing over here. So let's wrap this up.
Rabbi.
Yes, please.
The Rambam's even stronger because he doesn't mention that the sukkah was kasher in the beginning. He just says you can add the third wall in a certain case.
Yeah, it's as though he neglected to make the third wall before Yontif. He put up the schach and two walls, but he didn't have a third wall, so now he's machshir the sukkah. Machshir means finally, like, finish the sukkah almost. Yeah, so that's how the Rambam understands the Gemara. So now you see that kal v'chomer, we don't need achronim like the Ben Ish Chai, even though it's great that we have it, and the other ones, and who said this, and if the sukkah was made properly and the walls fell down such that the schach was remained standing, so not only does he not have to wait for Kol HaMoed, he doesn't have to relay the schach when he actually puts the walls back. Okay? So we're questioning, wait a minute. So when was Tasev Lo Mina Asui mentioned? Where did that come up? In which case? So let's look in the Rambam again. I'm going to stop it over here, and we're going to point out a diuk that they say in the Rambam. I'm going to put it over here. Someone stop me if they lose me, please. Here, let's open up the Mishnah Torah, Li Nikud. Why do I use the what do you call it, Machon Mamri without Nikud? Because Machon Mamri's Nikud confuses me, right?
Well, it's based on the Masoret.
Yeah, of how they pronounced it. Yeah. Look, it's as though it's as if we would start being menachem our Gemaras the way Ashkenazim pronounce things. You know, Tanu Rabbanon. Is it Tanu Rabbanon? Is that the right way to say it? If it's Aramaic, it's Tano. Okay, Shavah Chulam. Okay, so rewrite Tanu Rabbanon. Because now that's how it works. Okay.
Tishrei.
Yeah, Tishri. Yeah, you know where that's more of an Arabic form. They call the month Tishri. Okay, a lot of times, another guy was asking me just today, like, oh, I found that it's written, it's vowelized this way, it's vowelized that way in other editions. Yeah, those are more Aramaic or Arabic influenced forms. Okay. Let's see here. Where are we? Oh, you guys see you see what we're looking at over here? This is Hilchos Sukkah. By the way, look at this halach over here. Sukaso ben ha'ilanos. A person makes a sukkah between the trees. Oh, aren't we worried about? It says sukkah under the tree is puzzle. Why? Because the foliage of the tree basically is giving him the shade, and not the schach, right? But between the trees is okay. Oh, but they're branches. One single branch of a tree hanging over your sukkah is not really much of an issue. It doesn't create much tzel. Einstein has this whole thing about how light through slats actually divides up, right? Single slit experiment and all that. Mm-hmm. The wave particle duality of light says that, the light goes through the slit as particles, so you'd expect it just to make an exact slit, but because it's actually waves going through, the waves reform at the other side of the slit. Right? So what does that mean? So you get different bands of light. So too, the Rambam says when you have to have a sukkah that has more shade than sun, you're supposed to look at the floor. Okay? In the middle of the day when the sun's coming through your schach, look at the floor. Because sun coming through schach all divides up and you still end up pretty sunny on the floor. So you have to have quite thick schach. Okay? So that's the problem with underneath the tree. But over here, technically speaking, you have a tree. The tree itself, the trees are quite thick. The trees are the actual walls of the sukkah. Oh, what did he do? He shaved the trees at the side so there's absolutely no branches hanging over the sukkah? No, of course not. If you have a branch or a flagpole or something sufficiently high above the ground, it doesn't even cast a shadow. You know that? You guys notice this? Shadows are less sharp the higher up they are. So, right, if you have, let's say, a toy soldier on the ground, his shadow looks very sharp. But if a guy 6 feet tall, an hour and a half at Plaga Mincha before sunset, right, his shadow is very not sharp at the end. It's actually blurred. And as a matter of fact, he barely casts a shadow. Okay?
Even here.
In the sun, yeah. Shadows disperse. Okay? So, if you have a single flagpole hanging over your sukkah or a single branch, it's probably not going to do anything. So either way, he talks about this. So you should know that. Okay, where's this thing with the with the Gadish. Here's what it says. Ready? Here's a Tasav Linima Asu paradigm case. You'll see it's not similar to the one that the Ramah and the Levush have. What does it say? Okay, a person digs out a haystack. Okay, digging around in a haystack. Vasau Sukkah, Eina Sukkah. And this is a classic case. The Mishnah mentions this explicitly. There's a picture over here. You go to Ne'ot Kidumim, they have such a thing, right? Have you ever done that? Kids could do such a thing. He didn't stack up this haystack in order to make a shelter. He didn't make it lechatchila with a hollow space in there that he could use as a refuge from the sun. Let's say he actually made a gap while he was stacking the haystack. Have you ever seen a person like this? He actually had a frame in there to make sure that the haystack, as it's built, would actually have this halal, which has, just a tefach high, and it's as deep as 7 tefachim, right? And then he dug out from within and made it have a height of 10 tefachim, the minimum height of a sukkah. Then actually stacking the haystack was for the intention of making a shelter from the sun, even though the schach is contiguous with what? The walls. Lama dover dome. Let's say you had bales of hay, okay, which a haystack is basically like this. You make a straw bale house, okay, straw and hay. He starts stacking up these bales like bricks, and he builds the walls, and then he has an arc somehow of these guys on top, right? And that becomes a schach. So that'd be kosher. So even here, the way the Rambam has this particular halacha and the heter there, the Rambam, of course, would allow for put up a frame, stick the schach on top first, and then stick the walls. That was okay. Why? Because the schach was made l'chapila for what? For tzeel. That's what the Rambam says. The Rambam standard tasev lumina asoy is that the ceiling or the roof. By the way, what's the difference between ceiling and roof? Roof is the top side, ceiling is the bottom side. So when we build actual structures with modern construction, the ceiling is this thing that we see here. We put the lights and we put plaster and we paint it white. And the roof is whatever it is to make it waterproof on top. And Chazal, they also had a difference. So it's like Tikra and Ma'aziva and Gog.
Right.
Okay. But when you're just building a makeshift festival hut and it's just, reeds, bamboo, palm fronds, the ceiling is the roof, same thing, just one layer, right? You don't like I don't think anybody is so sophisticated that they're building a multi-layered schach that they first put down a bamboo mat to make it look nice and have this whole look to it, and then gigantic palm leaves that in case it rains they'll funnel the water or channel the water down to the sides like we do our roof tiles and not make sure the water falls into the sukkah. So the Rambam, basically his standard is tasev v'lo asui with regards to a haystack is considered a passive construction of the sukkah's roof or ceiling because it wasn't made initially as a shelter. But in Achinami, if you were to actually just build the schach first and then build the walls, the schach was made l'chachila to be the roof of the sukkah. You don't have to have it in that order. The Rambam never recognized that order. By the way, the Shulchan Aruch holds this way. I think also the Vilna Gaon endorses this. Okay, don't hold me. Don't sign my name to that one. But I think that basically proves the point well enough. These are all precedents for what that Gemara in Eruvin that Rambam brings halacha about creating the third wall on Yontif, even though the schach is already there, and also this case with the haystack explaining us what tasev v'lo asui disqualifies allows for one to lichatchila even put up the schach first and then the walls. And if his sukkah were, let's say, to suffer, a structural malfunction on Yontif, then even on Yontif, he has a way to rekasher the sukkah and without having to relay the schach. Okay, good. So we learned some halachas now. We understood it. We saw some Gemaras. We saw some Rambam.
We would like to encourage our viewers to share these videos with friends and send in your responses. If you would like to obtain Birkon Nusach Eretz Yisrael or invite the rabbi for a speaking engagement, please email us at office@machonshilo.org.